When Heath Ledger was found dead in his New York apartment on January 22, 2008, the world was stunned into silence. He was only 28 years old. He was a rising star with an Oscar nomination already under his belt. He had a young daughter. He had everything to live for. His death from an accidental prescription drug overdose felt impossible and senseless. The funeral in his hometown of Perth, Australia drew family and friends and co-stars from around the globe. Michelle Williams, the mother of his child, came to mourn. Naomi Watts, his former girlfriend, attended. His Brokeback Mountain co-stars sent tributes, but one person whose absence was particularly noted was Jack Nicholson. Both men had played the same iconic role, the Joker. Nicholson had defined the character in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. Ledger had reimagined it for Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, which was still in post-production when Ledger died. They were connected by this dark, twisted character that both had inhabited. Yet when Ledger was laid to rest, Nicholson was nowhere to be seen. No tribute, no flowers, no public acknowledgement, just a chilling reported comment. "I warned him." What did Nicholson mean? Why didn't he attend the funeral of the man who had followed in his footsteps into the darkness of the Joker? The answer reveals a disturbing truth about the cost of inhabiting evil and the different ways actors survive the roles that could destroy them. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. Nicholson Joker, 1989. In 1989, Jack Nicholson was already a legend. He had won 2 Academy Awards. He had played unforgettable characters in films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and The Shining and Chinatown. He was known for playing characters on the edge, men who were dangerous and unpredictable and often insane. So when director Tim Burton cast him as the Joker in Batman, it seemed like perfect casting. Nicholson brought manic energy to the role. His Joker was a gangster named Jack Napier who falls into a vat of chemicals and emerges as a grinning madman. He kills with joy. He dances to Prince songs while vandalizing art museums. He is terrifying and funny at the same time. Nicholson's performance was iconic. His smile became the stuff of nightmares. His delivery of lines like "wait till they get a load of me" entered pop culture forever. The film was a massive hit, earning over $400 million worldwide. It proved that comic book movies could be dark and serious and artistically ambitious, and it established the Joker as one of cinema's greatest villains. Nicholson owned the role. For nearly 2 decades, when people thought of the Joker, they thought of Jack Nicholson's face painted white with that horrifying red smile. But Nicholson approached the role differently than method actors might have. He did not lose himself in the character. He played the Joker with intensity and commitment, but when the cameras stopped rolling, he went back to being Jack Nicholson. He went to Lakers games. He socialized with friends. He lived his life. Nicholson understood that the Joker was a role, not an identity. This was partially because of his generation. Old Hollywood actors knew how to separate work from life. They clocked in and clocked out. But it was also because Nicholson had learned through decades of work how to protect himself. He knew that some characters could be dangerous if you let them in too deep, so he kept the Joker at arm's length. He controlled the character instead of letting the character control him. Nicholson also negotiated one of the greatest deals in Hollywood history for Batman. He took a percentage of the film's gross revenue and all merchandise sales. He made over $60 million from the film. This meant Nicholson had a financial stake in the Joker's success. The character had made him enormously wealthy. When other actors were later cast as the Joker, Nicholson had opinions about it. He felt possessive. He had defined the role, and he did not particularly like the idea of someone else trying to take it from him. Ledger cast as the new Joker, 2006. In 2006, Christopher Nolan was preparing to make The Dark Knight the sequel to his successful Batman Begins. He needed to cast the Joker. Nolan's vision for the character was different from Burton's. He did not want a gangster who falls into chemicals. He wanted pure chaos, an agent of anarchy with no clear origin story. He wanted the Joker to be terrifying in a realistic way, not a comic book villain, but something that could actually exist in the real world. A psychopath with no rules and no limits, Nolan chose Heath Ledger for the role. The decision surprised many people. Ledger was known for roles in romantic films like 10 Things I Hate About You and A Knight's Tale. Even his Oscar-nominated performance in Brokeback Mountain was about vulnerability and repressed emotion. He did not seem like an obvious choice to play a psychotic killer, but Nolan saw something in Ledger. He saw an actor willing to take risks. An actor who would go to dark places to find the truth of a character. An actor who would not just play the Joker but become him. When the casting was announced, there was immediate backlash. Fans compared Ledger to Nicholson and found him lacking. They said he was too young and too pretty, that he did not have the gravitas or the menace, that he would ruin the character Nicholson had made iconic. The internet was filled with criticism and doubt. Ledger felt the pressure. He knew he was being compared to a legend. He knew people expected him to fail. So he decided to go deeper into the role than he had ever gone before. Jack Nicholson was reportedly not happy about the casting. According to some reports, Nicholson felt that he should have been consulted, that the Joker was his character and Warner Brothers owed him the courtesy of asking his opinion. There were rumors that Nicholson felt disrespected, that he believed no one could play the Joker better than he had. Whether these reports were entirely accurate is unclear, but what is certain is that Nicholson did not publicly support Ledger's casting. He remained silent while the young actor faced intense scrutiny. Ledger's descent into the Joker. Heath Ledger approached the Joker with total commitment. He locked himself in a hotel room for 6 weeks to develop the character. He kept a diary written in the Joker's voice. He experimented with different voices and laughs. He studied psychopaths and anarchists. He watched films like A Clockwork Orange to understand violence without conscience. He created a character that was not just evil but incomprehensible, a force of nature that existed only to create chaos. The Joker that Ledger created was disturbing on a level that Nicholson's version had never reached. Ledger's Joker licked his lips constantly. He had tics and strange movements. His voice was a strange growl. His makeup was smeared and running as if he had applied it himself without a mirror. He told different stories about how he got his scars. He had no consistent backstory because he had no identity beyond chaos. Ledger disappeared into this character so completely that people on set were unsettled. When he was in makeup and costume, he stayed in character between takes. He was not Heath anymore. He was the Joker. This level of immersion took a toll. Ledger had always been a sensitive person. He felt things deeply. The role required him to access dark emotions and violent impulses. He had to go to places in his psyche that were dangerous. Friends noticed that he seemed troubled during filming. He had trouble sleeping. He told the New York Times in an interview that he was sleeping only 2 hours a night, that his mind would race and he could not shut it off. He took prescription sleeping pills to try to rest. He was exhausted and wired at the same time. Ledger finished filming The Dark Knight in late 2007. He moved on to another film called The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, but he could not shake the darkness. He was still having trouble sleeping. He was taking Ambient and other prescription medications. He was separating from Michelle Williams, the mother of his daughter. He was living alone in a New York apartment. He was isolated and struggling, and no one knew how bad it had got. January 22, 2008. The day Heath died. On January 22, 2008, Heath Ledger's housekeeper arrived at his apartment in Soho, Manhattan. She found him unconscious in his bedroom. She called his masseuse, who was scheduled to arrive for an appointment. The masseuse called 911. Paramedics rushed to the apartment, but it was too late. Heath Ledger was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 28 years old. On the nightstand next to his bed were multiple prescription pill bottles: Ambient, Valium, Xanax, oxycodone, hydrocodone, Restoral. The medical examiner would later rule the death an accident caused by acute intoxication from the combined effects of multiple medications. Ledger had not intentionally overdosed. He had been trying desperately to sleep and had taken too many pills in combination. The news spread instantly. Radio stations and television networks interrupted programming. Heath Ledger was dead. The response was shock and grief. He had been so young and so talented. He had a 2-year-old daughter named Matilda. He had seemed to have everything. His death felt like a terrible waste. Celebrities began posting tributes. His Brokeback Mountain co-star Jake Gyllenhaal was devastated. Director Ang Lee, who had directed Brokeback Mountain, called it a tragic loss. Michelle Williams was too grief-stricken to speak publicly. The world mourned a bright light that had been extinguished far too soon. When Jack Nicholson was asked for comment by a reporter, his response was chilling. According to reports, Nicholson said, "I warned him." The reporter asked what he meant. Nicholson allegedly said that he had warned Ledger about the dangers of playing the Joker, that the role was dark and could mess with your head, that you had to be careful not to let it consume you. Whether this conversation between Nicholson and Ledger ever actually happened is unclear. Some reports suggest Nicholson tried to reach out to Ledger during filming. Others say they never spoke. But the "I warned him" comment became part of the mythology around Ledger's death. It suggested that Nicholson understood something about the Joker that Ledger had not, that the role carried a curse or a danger, that Nicholson had survived it but Ledger had not. The funeral in Perth, February 9, 2008. Heath Ledger's body was flown back to Australia where he had grown up. The funeral was held on February 9, 2008 at Penrose College in Perth. It was a private ceremony attended by family and close friends. His parents Kim and Sally were there, devastated by the loss of their son. His sister Kate spoke about his kindness and his talent. Michelle Williams attended with their daughter Matilda, who was too young to understand what had happened. Naomi Watts, who had dated Ledger years earlier, came to pay her respects. Cate Blanchett, another Australian actor, attended. The service included a tribute video showing Ledger's life from childhood through his acting career. Outside, the funeral, crowds of fans gathered. They held signs and left flowers and photos. Ledger had been a source of pride for Australians. He had made it in Hollywood while staying true to himself. His death felt personal to people who had never met him. The service was emotional and heartbreaking. A young life cut short, a father who would never see his daughter grow up, a talent that would never be fully realized. Hollywood sent tributes, but many could not make the journey to Australia. It was literally on the other side of the world. The funeral was private and held quickly. Some actors sent flowers or video messages, but most mourned from a distance. The absence of certain people was noted. Jack Nicholson did not attend. He did not send flowers as far as anyone knows. He did not make a public statement beyond the alleged "I warned him" comment. His silence was loud. The answer why Nicholson did not attend. Jack Nicholson did not attend Heath Ledger's funeral for a combination of practical and psychological reasons. The most obvious reason was geography. The funeral was held in Perth, Australia, which is approximately 9,000 miles from Los Angeles. It is one of the most isolated major cities in the world. The flight from LA to Perth takes over 20 hours with connections. Nicholson was 70 years old in 2008. Making that journey for the funeral of someone he barely knew would have been physically demanding and frankly unnecessary. The funeral was also private and held quickly. It was for family and close friends. Nicholson was neither. The deeper truth is that Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger did not have a personal relationship. They had never worked together. They had never spent time together socially. Their only connection was that they had both played the Joker. That is a professional connection, not a personal one. Nicholson did not attend funerals of people he did not know personally. It would have been strange and performative for him to fly to Australia to attend the funeral of a young actor he had met maybe once or twice in passing at industry events. There was also the matter of Nicholson's reported feelings about Ledger taking over the Joker role. If the reports about Nicholson feeling slighted by not being consulted were true, then there was tension. Nicholson may have felt competitive with Ledger. He may have resented that a new generation was claiming the character he had made famous. Attending the funeral would have required putting those feelings aside, and Nicholson was never one to hide his true emotions or perform false sentiment. The "I warned him" comment, if accurate, reveals something important about Nicholson's mindset. Nicholson understood the darkness of the Joker role. He had played a man who murders and destroys with glee. He had accessed violent and chaotic impulses. But Nicholson had survived because he knew how to compartmentalize. He knew how to play evil without becoming it. He had watched Ledger's approach, which was total immersion, and he may have seen disaster coming. Method acting, especially with dark characters, can be psychologically dangerous. Ledger had no off switch. He lived in the character's head even when cameras were not rolling. Nicholson's warning, if it happened, was about this danger. And when Ledger died, Nicholson may have felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness for a young life lost, but also perhaps a grim validation of his warning. Perhaps even some guilt for not doing more to reach out. Nicholson also may have struggled with the uncomfortable questions that Ledger's death raised. Did the Joker role contribute to Ledger's death? Did the psychological toll of playing that character lead to the insomnia and the prescription drug use that killed him? These questions were being asked in the media, and they implicitly asked whether playing the Joker was dangerous, whether the role carried some kind of curse. Nicholson had played the role and lived, but he also knew he had been lucky. He had the tools and the experience to protect himself. Ledger had not. Attending the funeral would have meant confronting these questions publicly, facing cameras and being asked about the Joker and the cost of the role. Nicholson avoided it entirely by staying silent and staying away. Finally, there is the simple fact that Nicholson by 2008 was semi-retired and increasingly private. He had already begun to withdraw from Hollywood. He made fewer films. He attended fewer events. He was in his 70s and had lived a full, wild life. He had partied harder than almost anyone in Hollywood. He had done drugs and drunk heavily and slept with hundreds of women. By all rights, he should have died young like so many of his contemporaries, but he had survived. He had learned when to pull back, when to protect himself. Ledger's death was a reminder of the cost of not pulling back, of pushing too hard and going too deep. Nicholson had nothing to say about it that would not sound like judgment or self-congratulation. So he said nothing, or almost nothing, just "I warned him," and then silence. The Dark Knight and the aftermath. 6 months after Heath Ledger's death, The Dark Knight was released in July 2008. The film became a phenomenon. It made over $1 billion worldwide. But the main reason people went to see it was to witness Heath Ledger's final complete performance. His Joker was terrifying and mesmerizing. Critics called it one of the greatest villain performances in cinema history. Audiences agreed. The film was dedicated to Ledger's memory. Every review mentioned his death. The performance was inseparable from the tragedy. In February 2009, Heath Ledger won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor posthumously. His family accepted the award on his behalf. It was a bittersweet moment. Recognition of his genius, but also a reminder of what was lost. Ledger had been right to push himself. His Joker was better than anyone could have imagined, but the cost had been his life. That trade-off felt unbearable. Jack Nicholson's Joker was suddenly being compared unfavorably to Ledger's. Critics said Ledger had taken the character to a deeper, darker place, that his version was more realistic and more frightening. Nicholson's Joker was now seen as campy and dated. The torch had been passed, but the new torchbearer was dead. There was no triumph in it, just tragedy. Nicholson never publicly commented on Ledger's Oscar win. He never spoke about The Dark Knight. He maintained his silence. Some saw this as disrespectful. Others saw it as honest. Nicholson had nothing to add to the conversation. He had played the Joker his way and survived. Ledger had played it his way and died. There was no moral to that story. No lesson except perhaps that some roles are more dangerous than others, and some actors are more fragile than they appear. Two Jokers, two fates. The connection between Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger will always be the Joker, two actors separated by a generation who both inhabited the same twisted character. Nicholson's Joker was theatrical and larger than life. Ledger's Joker was intimate and terrifying. Both were brilliant. Both changed how people thought about comic book villains, but their fates were completely different. Nicholson lived into his 80s and is still alive today. He survived decades of excess and dangerous roles and emerged relatively intact. Ledger died at 28 before his career had fully blossomed. One learned how to protect himself from the darkness. The other did not. The story of why Jack Nicholson did not attend Heath Ledger's funeral is a story about distance, both physical and emotional. It is about two actors who shared a role but not a relationship. It is about the different ways actors approach dangerous characters. Nicholson played the Joker with control and walked away unscathed. Ledger played the Joker with total abandon, and it may have contributed to his death. Nicholson's absence from the funeral was not about disrespect. It was about honesty. He barely knew Ledger. He had no place at that funeral. His tribute, if it can be called that, was the alleged warning. "I warned him." 3 words that suggest Nicholson understood the danger and tried to communicate it. Whether Ledger ever heard that warning is unknown, but the warning proved tragically accurate. What do you think about Jack Nicholson's absence from Heath Ledger's funeral? Should he have made the effort to attend despite the distance and lack of personal relationship? Or was his decision to stay away the more honest choice? Do you think the Joker role contributed to Ledger's death, or was it simply a tragic accident unrelated to his work? Which Joker performance do you prefer? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this exploration of 2 legendary performances and 1 tragic loss moved you, please hit the like button and share this video with fellow film fans. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about the roles and the risks that define great acting. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Goodbye.